Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello. Today, I've got my friend, Josue Velney. Did I pronounce that right? I keep wanting to say Josue. My friend's Josue. Josie, right?
No, that is correct. That is
Awesome.
correct.
How are you today, man?
Good, good. Can't complain. Staying busy, staying focused. A little rainy over here, but still getting the job done.
Getting it done every single day. And I was just sharing same thing. It's usually sunny out here in Denver. It's a little rainy. It's a little cold, but we still got to get our work done. We still got to bring the energy because we can't let the outside external forces affect the internal stuff that we deal with every day.
I agree with that 100%.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience? I know you. I've gotten a chance to hear you on a couple of podcasts that you've been on. You've been on a little podcast route. I love it. You're just motivated.
Yeah.
You got the mic. But I met you at the Carrot Camp, and I actually have a water bottle here with me. So back in May 2021 in Oregon. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves for those in the audience who may not have listened to your podcast just yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Like you said, my name is Josue Velney. I currently in the Boston market. I've been investing in real estate since 2010. I currently have my license as a real estate broker. I'm also a licensed contractor, graduated with a construction management degree. And I pretty much built out my portfolio from the ground up, from no pun intended, since I'm in construction.
From the ground up.
But yeah,
That's funny.
yeah, but I started, with a first time home buyer. Had the opportunity to purchase my first one at 450,000, and now it's worth 1.1 because the market is booming. But now I also grew it up to we currently have 25 units now under our rental portfolio, and we currently have about 43 units under construction now or either going through zoning at this time.
That's amazing. And you also have a background. I mean, you kind of skipped right over it, but you served in the Marines. It was the Marines, right?
Correct. So I served 5 years in the Marine Corps.
And
I
as a
had
firefighter.
three combat tours in the Marines. Did two in Iraq, and then one on ship chasing pirates with the Navy.
Yeah, I remember you sharing that story. I was like, dude, you got these stories that no one else can top. Our stories are usually like, oh, we were doing this, we were getting chased by like a hobo or something, but you were here getting chased by pirates and stuff.
Yeah. And after I came home, I also served 12 years on the fire department, and I retired as a fire lieutenant. And now it's just real estate developing full time.
That's amazing, man. Well, thank you for your service in the military and as a firefighter. It's cool that you've been giving back. And I know that's part of your message is, hey, you did your time in the Marines, you did your time like for the fire department, and now you are investing for your family, for your future, and like to leave a legacy. I think I heard you say that on another podcast. And so I just love that you've come so far with 25 units in the portfolio, 43 under construction and with zoning. And you said your first property you purchased for 450,000?
Correct. 450,000 I bought. Yep.
Awesome. And how did you feel when you made that first purchase? Did you feel like nervous or, oh man, what if I make a mistake? I'm sure there was some level of hesitation.
No, honestly, there was no hesitation because it took about 4 months looking for the property. And through that process, I went through first time home buyers courses. I had a licensed agent working with me. And I had a quota, even because I knew eventually they would hate me. So I had a quota on Saturdays and Sundays. I would look at over 10 properties every weekend. So by the time I found my house, I could pull the trigger very, very, very quick because I knew exactly what I wanted because I have seen all the inventory. I knew when something was on the market. I knew when something left the market. I knew how much it sold for. So I knew a lot to the point that my agent was actually late to that appointment, and I just connected with the seller. The seller was a retired Navy, so we connected. We figured out, okay, how do we solve both our problems? At the time, the seller, he had somebody that backed out of the deal, and he already bought his plane ticket to Florida. So so he had a little bit of a motivation to sell the house, and I had a motivation. I needed a place to live, so we kind of connected the dots to the point that I was supposed to close on November 1st. I ended up closing November 15th. And so the seller already the person that was living on the first floor left They wasn't evicted, but they knew that the sale was coming, that they had to leave. And I moved in early, 15 days early, to the point that myself and the seller drove in the same vehicle to the closing.
That's amazing. So you drove together to the closing because you had already like moved in.
Correct. I already moved in. We built a relationship. Him and I had lunch together. We had dinner together. To this day,
Nice.
we still contact. We reach out probably about a few times a year.
That's amazing. And that just goes to show the power of like creating a relationship and networking and just having a conversation, which is a lot of this business, the real estate investing side. It's like, hey, he's got a problem. You have a solution. He wants to get that thing sold. He's already got his plane ticket to move and you need a place to live. So where can we meet in the middle? As long as the numbers work and, you close on a date that's agreeable to both people, that's where the magic happens. And that's how you were able to get that first transaction, which is freaking crazy to hear. You said 1.1 million or something it's worth now, just with all the crazy appreciation, the way the market's been.
Correct. It's part of it's the appreciation. Part of it is the location. They just have a new train station moving a block away, so that helped the value a lot too.
Yeah, for sure. Just like the ability to commute and the location. I think I heard you talking about that when you were talking on Trevor's podcast as well. That first property. I mean, that sounds like a home run deal. But the thing here too is that you pulled the trigger, you were doing your numbers so that every weekend you were getting practice. So when that property came across your desk or your computer screen, you were easily able to run the numbers and be like, yeah, this checks all the boxes. This is the price that I need to get it at for it to be a deal. Versus if you were just waiting and waiting and waiting and you looked at it, it could be the best deal of your life and you wouldn't have known because you wouldn't have done the reps. So you were prepared, and luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So there you go. That's how you got
Absolutely.
lucky, right? You were
Yeah.
prepared and you found the opportunity. So it was not luck. You were prepared.
Absolutely. And during that time, I was doing everything it took to find that property. I'm in a competitive market and I was visualizing, okay, what would it look like to be in my own house? What would it look like to pay, my own mortgage? It's interesting because that wasn't my dream home. And I did not buy my dream home till 6 years after, in the exact location I wanted. It was right in front of the water. You open up the blinds and you're drinking coffee and you're looking at the water. It was just like perfect, but it just shows the power of visualizing and how you can connect that if you're seeing those things. Some people have vision boards. I'm not a big vision board guy, but I'm a big visionary.
I love that. And just being able to see the invisible allows you to do the impossible. I heard that on a motivational clip. So those who can actually see the invisible, most people, they can't see it, they can't imagine it. So it can't be possible is what they think. But since you're able to visualize, what would that first house look like, that perfect deal? What does my dream house look like? What does the view look like? You're able to spot it whenever you do see it, and it helps you manifest it in a way that others can't because they've never visualized it. They never thought of it. They're not visionaries in most cases. How did you start to become a visionary? How did you start to develop that muscle, I guess, because so many people don't even know that it's possible. So I'm just curious to see if did you read a book? Did you learn this from a mentor?
Yeah, I read a lot of books prior. I try to always have a good mix of books. I don't really want to focus on one subject. Sometimes it's like visionary and sometimes it's more about like business. But like The Millionaire Next Door,
Yep.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, those kind of things. And a lot of those, they always start off talking about, it's about mindset. So I started really focusing on books with mindset. And they said some of the most successful people, they always vividly dream of like what they want. And most of them are usually shocked the fact that that picture that they had in their head, because they forget about it. But then when they think back and they see, wow, this was my vision, this is where I wanted to be. One thing I also learned throughout my career is that, sometimes we don't set goals big enough. It's like,
True.
I remember when I graduated from construction management with my degree. And I said, because of lack of capital, I'm going to make my niche, anywhere between 5 and 10 units, because I felt like, a lot of people wasn't really in that space. And 6 months later, I had an opportunity to do one of the biggest projects we're going to start next spring is 28 units. And it was just not thinking that it was possible, but it was just with the right connections, being in the right place. And when people see you work hard, they want to help.
Definitely. And that kind of goes back to the luck is when preparation meets opportunity, because you spend all this time preparing so that when that opportunity comes for that large project, you're not way in over your head. You're like, wait a second, we kind of already did this other one that was similar. This one's going to be a little bit bigger, but we also have the right mentors and the right partners to help make sure that we are successful as a team.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. You know, real estate is a team sport. You know, you can't do everything by yourself. You need
Right.
those, you need that leadership, you know, and you need the vision. You know, when I first got excited about the 28 units, and I was like, man, I'm gonna tackle this, but I'm gonna tackle it in a safe way because I'm doing it with somebody that has done it before. You
Exactly. And
know?
that's something so many people forget. Like, I'm sure you're splitting the deal or the profits. And a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to do 50-50. I want to keep 100%. Then they bite off more than they could chew and they lose money because they didn't have that person with that more experience in that area. So, because you went out there and you sought someone who has the experience, like you said, it's kind of protecting you in a way because that person also has knowledge on what to look out for, how to get the permits, they've done it before. And that's where the value's there, because maybe you split it 50-50 or whatever the split is, but it's going to have way more chances of success than if you try to be greedy and do it all on your own. And you ran into this issue that person knew about. You ran into this other issue that person knew about. Right. So I'm sure you're looking at it from that abundance mentality instead of that scarcity mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Another way I look at it is, you know, I played high school football, and I'm a big football fan, especially home of the Patriots. You know, so.
Right.
But I look at it as punting. I feel like what I'm doing in my career right now is I'm trying to get better field position.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what I mean by that, as I learned how to do bigger projects, this is only going to set me up 5 years, 10 years from now that I might do this project by myself. Or I might step into that role where that mentor is, and I'm mentoring somebody else that's coming up into this game and they want to learn how to do it the proper way. But it's all about getting better field position.
Absolutely. That I love that. Just getting in better field position. I wrote that down. So you're punting and you're getting ready for bigger projects down the road, whether you take it on by yourself or you are that mentor for someone else who is in the position that you were in, right? Because it's kind of cool to give back as well when you see it come around full circle. Someone was there for you, now you're there for someone, and it's a win-win. You still both benefit financially and just the fun of the project and the completion. But also you get to give it back to someone else who's getting their feet wet and is not quite as experienced as you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a wise person once told me, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. It just flows like water. And you know, I also believe in the peanut butter rule. You know, like I said, my first closing, I drove there with the seller. I still have other sellers that I still keep good relationships with. You know, I send them Christmas presents, stuff like that. But I just feel like for me, you know, my market is 6 miles. I refuse to go further than that, minus
Hmm.
Martha's Vineyard, which is like a vacation home that I would like to buy in the future. But with my 6 mile radius, most of the time I bump into my tenants. You know, like I'm at the supermarket and I'm like, do I really want to bump into them? But if you're not nice to everybody, it's going to make it a little awkward, you know, having an argument with the tenant in aisle 14. So
That's funny. Wait, so what did you call that? The peanut butter rule?
yeah, the peanut butter rule. I heard it on another podcast, and the guy was talking about that he loves peanut butter, and he doesn't want to have confrontation of trying to get his peanut butter. So that was his reason for being nice to everybody and treating
That's
everybody right.
hilarious. Yeah, you don't want a confrontation on aisle 14 or whatever, trying to get your peanut butter. That's hilarious. But yeah, just what goes around comes around type thing. I was just reading this in, I think, the book called The 5 Second Rule by Mel Robbins. If you've heard of that, they had an
No.
example of how someone saw somebody at the grocery store and they thought about saying hi and then they didn't. And then they saw them again and she was too busy, so she didn't say hi. And then that person actually passed away in an accident or something, got hit by a drunk driver. And so that was just saying, I know it's kind of like a way to shift this. It's a little morbid. I'm sorry. I kind of shifted the tone of the conversation. But the example that they were saying is don't wait to say hello to that person because you think that they're too busy or you're too busy and you don't know when's that last moment going to be. Or looking at the positive side, What if that conversation leads to a referral? Like, hey, my neighbor said that they're going to sell their house. You want to go make an offer on it? Right. So there's so much power in having a random conversation. So I love what you said there, the peanut butter rule. I just wanted to harp on that and also share what I just read in that book, because a lot of times we hold ourselves back from just stepping out and having that 5-minute conversation, but it could be completely life changing for us and for someone
Yeah,
else.
absolutely. Absolutely. And as you know, you've been to Carrot Camp, and one thing that I loved about it was not to focus on the business, because that's the easy part. That we're going to figure that out.
Yeah.
It's more the focus on the personal stuff, and like, the 24-hour exercise that we do, and seeing how that that shifts the way you think about life, business. For me, I can tell you, prior to Carrot Camp, I was in school, so I was working 50 hours in the firehouse, and I was taking 4 classes. So I didn't get a lot of time to hang out and, take my wife on dates. And now that after the fact, after taking that 24-hour test, what I do now is if I see my wife coming home, or we coordinate when she's going to be home, that's when work is done. Like, work will be there the next day. And it's the same thing for my family, and her family is my family, because we live closer to her family. So seeing them on weekends, always making time. And sometimes I like to combine the two. I'll have her father and my father-in-law and say, hey, you want to come check out my project? Hey, let me know what you think. And that's one way that him and I have bonded together. One of the projects that we're looking forward to actually completing together once he retires, that we're going to build a 3-family together for the next generation. So I'm really excited about that.
That's amazing. That's going to be the true test, because that was the relationship test, is when I try to put furniture together with my fiance. So let alone build a 3-unit. That's great.
Yeah.
But for those listening, it was just funny because, like, she was we were shipping boxes to Denver from Houston of furniture, and then she'd want to start putting it together right away. And I'm like, it just came in. That doesn't mean we have to build it. I wanted to procrastinate. So it caused a little bit of like friendly tension. It was kind of funny because she wanted to build it and I didn't want to do that yet. I delegate everything, right? So whenever I have to do work, I'm like, oh, come on. I need my virtual assistant to come help me out. But for those listening, the 24 hours to live exercise, that was mind blowing and opening at Carrot Camp. And basically Trevor Mock was just saying, imagine you have 24 hours to live, but you can't tell anybody about it. You can't share that you only have 24 hours to live. How do the conversations change? Who do you need to make amends with, right? What conversations or what words have you left unsaid that you need to go say, right? So that was extremely powerful. A lot of people are like, hey, I don't call my parents as much as I should. I need to call them today. Like, on my lunch break, I'm going to go do that, right? So that was extremely powerful. For everyone listening, make sure to go try that and take it seriously. Write it out on a paper, because that's where you have that mindset shift. And like you just said there, now when your wife comes home, you're like, hey, work's done. We're going to spend time together. We're going to go out on a date. And you're really savoring that time together instead of burying your head in work, because it's going to be there tomorrow and the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had a lot of fun at Carrot Camp, and just a lot of the people there, I still keep in great connection with. And I love the fact that, like, you wasn't like that person that I was envisioned that would be going to Carrot Camp. You're like big on the podcast, yeah. You wasn't even a Carrot member actually at the time.
I didn't even use the software. Now I'm drinking out of the water bottle.
Yeah,
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. But, honestly, like, out of all the people that was at Carrot Camp, you and Brady made the biggest impression, because the biggest thing is that I always felt, as serving my country and serving on the fire department, I never had a voice, because I could never say what I wanted, because it would go back to the organization that I worked for, that I serve, and the people that I serve. And then once that chapter was over, it was time for me to stand up and take that responsibility in order to brand my company and build my business. That was my job. So that was also a shift for me that you guys definitely helped me make. And it's been a great ride.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to hear that, because I do remember that conversation. We were at that brewery doing the little tour, and some people were like looking at the tour. We were just talking about, the podcast and chasing pirates, and how cool of a story that is, that you just got to go out there and just share like your message, your story, how you've been shifting your hats, from serving the country to serving and working with the fire department to now building a legacy for your family and really pouring yourself into your business. But also part of that's just sharing your, like you said, you didn't really have a voice previously, or you didn't want to reflect badly on the organizations. And now it's like you get to go out there and say what you like and say what you think. And people want to hear that story because they get inspired. So I'm pretty humbled to hear. I appreciate that, that I actually had a positive impact. And it's awesome to see you've been on several podcasts already. You bought the equipment and the gear. And I remember you hadn't done a single one at that time when we spoke, and here you are. How many have you done so far? Probably 4 or 5 or more at this point, right?
Nine. Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
You're doing more podcasts than me these days.
Yeah.
I love
The best I did 3 in 1 weekend, and it
That's
was
cool.
phenomenal because like one guy just like he found me from like New Jersey, and I was like, "How'd you get my number? Is this a cold call?"
Is this spam?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "Hey, I'm from New Jersey. I want to come down. I want to check out your project, and I'll do the podcast right there." I go, "Come again?"
Was that the one in that van?
Yes, yeah.
they had a mobile podcast studio in a Sprinter van. That was incredible.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun on that one. Yeah, absolutely.
That's so cool. And that kind of goes to show the power of just proximity and getting around people. Because I share this to my followers on my social media all the time. Like people look at me and they're like, "Man, Chris, you're so successful. You're killing it. This and that." From the outside looking in, it looks like I have everything that so many people want, but I still struggle with self-doubt. We all do. And many times I'm thinking, man, is my podcast declining? Or my numbers going to go down? Do I still have that edge or the drive that I used to? And then it's so cool when you meet someone like I was able to inspire you. That lights me up for sure when I'm like, wow, me taking the time to go to this event, even though I didn't have Carrot, I wasn't a customer, I shared something. And even Keith, he closed 8 deals using the Calendly trick that I suggested. That kind of gives me the validation that, while I do have self-doubt, I also have value that I can add. We all do. So that's just really cool to hear. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I definitely don't fall into that model. And I've been fighting that pretty much my whole career, that I'm not that real estate investor wholesaler. I'm more developer. So I'm like, I don't know any meetups or any masterminds for developers,
Right. It's like, you're so right. Because so many of these meetups are either real estate agents or wholesalers, or maybe occasional, like a wholesaler that does flipping as well. Developer kind of has that, man, you're fancy. You're going to be building neighborhoods and stuff. It's kind of that higher caliber, but you also went ahead and you got all the education. So you did the degree and stuff, and you have the credibility. So you're not just this like fly by night investor guy who's wearing a hat that says investor and you've never done deals. You've actually taken the time to hone your craft and become an expert, which I think really shows, you still maintain communication with many of your sellers. Like, you're dealing with people and their houses. And I think you do a great job of really bringing that aspect of the industry that's missing for a lot of people. We get a lot of bad raps for the people in this space.
Yeah, and I think, and as far as like developing, I think that's the biggest component that people don't realize is, I had a professor in college and he used to tell me, I can teach you how to build a house, but if you can't go through zoning, if you can't get the neighborhood excited about your project, you're never going to get this project done.
Right.
And it's about compromising. It's about understanding. And it just brings me back to all the things I learned in the Marine Corps. When we were in Iraq, it's like, if you do harm to the people there in the neighborhood there, how are they going to treat you when you drive through? Are you going to create more harm? Are you going to put your guys in danger? It's like, how do you accomplish the mission and having everybody on the same page and fighting for that? If you can get your project, the neighborhood, and the city all on the same page, you're going to have a successful career. I mean, I can tell you one of my projects, we needed water because we're doing utility work and we're cutting up the sidewalk and we don't have water. And that's why we're doing utility work. And I have to ask the neighbor for water. If I was rude or if I didn't have a relationship with those neighbors, they wouldn't let me.
Right.
And it's also helping the community. We have one individual next door and he has a cleaning service. And I'm explaining to him, hey, how to turn your company to a minority owned company. Hey, if I'm doing 28 units, and we need a cleaning supplier, hey, maybe you can come in. Like, how do you improve it? And one of the biggest things I took from Trevor from Carrot Camp is, how do you improve your community? So one of the biggest things I have done is I have been able to get architects and lenders to come into my community. And in the way, because they usually want me to come down to their fancy place in downtown, all the skyscrapers. And the way I usually get around it is because they was like, "Hey, come down here. I'll give you lunch. We'll sit down. We'll talk about how we can work together." And I'm like, "Well, my project's over here. Let's come to this
project."
Yeah, let's come to this local place where it's usually neighborhood place. So I'm pouring money back into supporting back my neighborhood, and then I show them the project. So the project is my excuse to get them there, so they can't have an argument.
I love that. So you're pouring back into the community. That was another big takeaway, because when we were there, I think we went to breweries both nights. One was a tour, one was more of like the one that he had helped fund or start up or whatever, with that young guy who was the bus driver. I forget his name, but it was so cool to see the impact. Like, another person helped people build bicycles for kids in need and like taught them, so they had a place to expend their energy, and they were able to get access to bicycles where maybe they couldn't afford it. And that just goes to show, like, pouring back into your direct community and making a positive impact. Like, it's so powerful, because you get to, not only are you improving properties out there, you're building beautiful homes in multifamily places for people to rent or purchase down the road, but you're also supporting the local businesses and restaurants. And so I love how you said, you even offer to the neighbor, maybe your business can come and help us with that. That's the best way to give back, is to support someone's business, and they're going to want to reciprocate however they can down the road. I've been finding that for myself too. So I love supporting people. Like, "Hey, what's your business? Let me see if I can buy some stuff from you," and just give it away, even if it's not for me. Right? Have you been doing that a lot in your community?
Absolutely. I used to have this limited mindset that when I make X, or once I make enough money, then I will give back, but it's like the little things, like I'm a board
Yeah,
member at the YMCA. So even if you don't have money, can you give back time?
exactly.
Can you? I have a friend that's a high school teacher, and he's like, "Can you come and talk to my kids?" That is all giving back. Money is not the only way to give back, and just making an impact. And when somebody tells you, "Hey, this really changed how I looked at things, and it helped me improve," that's the biggest reward right there. If you get from that whole situation, not they didn't get the reward, you got the reward, because somebody realized like the impact, and you feel that you're making the impact, and your family feels like you're making the impact. I want to do this business for a long time. I want to continue building bigger and bigger and bigger, but I don't want to do it by only having the biggest skyscraper. I want everybody else's skyscraper just as high as mine.
Exactly. I love that, because it isn't, it's more about that abundance instead of the limited mindset, because a lot of people think it's a zero sum game. Like, if that person's got the skyscraper, that means that I'm here starving for business. But no, we can all have that skyscraper. We can all build each other up. And it's almost like 1 + 1 can equal 3. I've heard that said before, especially when two minds come together, a third mind Napoleon Hill talks about masterminds, a third mind can come up. So when you're collaborating with other business owners, instead of competing with them, you can all improve your businesses. You can all grow. There's more than enough for all of us. It's just a matter of thinking abundantly.
Absolutely. And you're always learning. There's so many strategies out there. You can take something from the tech space and then bring it into real estate, and that can just change your business, because as the niche, if you can find the niche, that's where you're going to get rich. It's just there. It's just, you're not gonna, if you're just shooting a wide range, you're not going to hit anything. But once you get deep into those niches, and that's one thing that helped me become very, very competitive in my market, because I look at the other people, the other players, and I'm like, okay, so what do they do better than me? And I said, fine, they can do that better than me. This is what I do better than them. So I'm going to double down, and I'm going to focus on this and become the best at this, so that everybody knows, hey, if I find this deal, this is perfect for Jose. There's a lot of investors in my market that has way more money than me. They can buy a beautiful house on MLS. I can't do that, but I can build a house. So just give me the land, I'll build a house. So that's what I do. I'm a developer. So because of that mindset, that has shifted another part. And then I added onto that niche, because at first I was just focusing on the land. And what I have found, My best deals actually was when I bought the house that came with the land, because the land investors don't want the house. And then the regular investors only want the house. So I said, I'll take both, and I'll create all of them as rentals
That's
and
cool.
build out the portfolio.
So are you buying land with a property on it and you're adding to it as well? You're you're building additional units on there?
Yes, correct. So one thing I did, I recently bought a house actually on market, and I bought it for 920,000. It's a two-family, and it has a plot of land in the back. And I've been working with my architect for the last couple of months, and we designed a three-family. We're about to submit to the city, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Sweet. So you're seeing things creatively, whereas one investor may just look at the land, another may just look at that one house. You're seeing like a third view of opportunity that very few people are looking at as, hey, this has a lot of land and it has that house. I can renovate that house and I could build a three family in the back and get it all approved through the city. So you're kind of seeing things that most people are not, which lowers the amount of competition and the amount of eyes on that property. Because you said that was on market, right? And you were able to make a deal where other people maybe didn't think it was that much of a deal.
Correct. And, part of it is the real estate investors, the real estate agents, not marketing the fact that they got this big backyard over here. But because I already owned three doors down, I knew what the backyard looked like. And I started making those relationships with the seller through the agent. And I said, listen, I own 3 blocks down, 3 houses down. My father-in-law also owns on this street. I would love to continue to buy in this area. I might not be the highest, but I'm gonna love this project more than everybody else. And they thought that was amazing.
Close too.
yeah. So that definitely helped. Just building those relationships, because you're not at the table when they're talking to the seller. So you have to get that agent on board with you and your vision, and once they buy in, then they have to sell it to the seller.
Exactly. And building rapport goes such a long way, because especially if you're coming in lower than the asking price, if they feel good about your conversation and they're like, okay, you're a respectable person, you own a couple properties down the street, your father-in-law owns a property in the neighborhood, those are all credibility versus just the random person who submits an offer $50,000 under asking price without any phone call or rapport building at all, right? So because you build that relationship, you sell yourself to the realtor who then sells you to the seller. That's like an additional, I've seen that hurdle before as well. It's like two people you have to kind of build rapport with in a way. Or if you can go directly to the seller, if it's off market, that's great too, because then you can build that relationship. But relationship is key. I just wanted to touch on that because a lot of people skip over that. They get down to business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I love to focus on is credibility. I always think, how is this going to look back on me? I remember I bought a condo, and it was below market. Just one of the sellers that I still friends with, and and she laughed and she told me, she goes, you got a great deal, right? So you know what I mean.
So she knew. She's just like, hey, I like you, and that's how it works. Even if you find a mentor who's like way more successful, and you're like, why are they spending their time on me? Sometimes it's just because they like you. They're like, I like your energy. You're positive, you're willing to learn. And for that reason, I'm willing to help you out, So same thing, the seller knew that you got a great deal. And she's like, hey, look, I just hooked you up, and that's okay because you're a good person. And I can tell that.
Absolutely. But, here was what that changed everything. So she says, I understand what you're saying. I like everything you're saying, but I'm not sure. She goes, let me sleep on it, and I'm going to call my attorney. And I said, great. Just let me know in a couple of days, whatever you think. And she calls me the next morning. She goes, when can you sign? I said, what? I said, what shift? I was like, you must have had a great sleep,
Had a great dream or something.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is she called her attorney, and her attorney knew me personally.
Wow. And that is where the good word, like, hey, this guy does what he says he's going to do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So she knew I was a closer. She knew that I was a good person. And then it just created that closing. It just made everything that so much easier. It's been fantastic.
That's like the nail in the coffin in terms of closing the deal in a good way, because once she made that call and realized that that attorney had great things to say about you as well. I mean, your word and your reputation mean everything, right? Like it takes 20 years to build it up and 5 seconds to destroy it. But because you've been building your reputation and doing good and supporting the community, like you're making these little ripple effects. So now it came full circle where the attorney was like, oh yeah, this guy, I worked with him before. He's an incredible person. He donates, his time and his money and energy to this charity, gives back to the community. I mean, that's why she called back, hey, let's do this deal. And it's also hard to, when money's involved and numbers and negotiating, it can be difficult because like maybe they know they want to get more money, but you're trying to get a deal. So you're trying to meet in the middle. But it helps so much more when people feel good about you as a person. They feel like they can trust you, and they're willing to budge a little bit, maybe, especially like, look, you served our country, you were in the fire department for so many years. Like, come on, you already paid your dues. Let me just give you 10 grand off the sales price,
Honestly, she was the best seller I've ever had. so, so the conversation went like this. She's like, well, this is why I think I should sell it. I go, how'd you come up with this number? And she goes, she got a piece of paper. And she goes, well, this unit sold for this much. And she goes, agents make 5%. So she started subtracting,
She's taking off all those fees.
Yeah, she's like,
Awesome.
we need a new kitchen,
Wow. So she understood. She's a realistic seller, which usually doesn't happen. They're like, I want as much as that person. And they're like, that person has 100 grand more in upgrades than you, right? Yeah. Well, I still want that much. My house is worth that. You're like, you haven't updated the kitchen in 50 years. The bathrooms are all dated. You have no granite countertops. So she sounds like an incredible seller. But I mean, that kind of goes to show just the power of putting out, good work and your name and your brand recognition that starts to really come back to help you later on.
Yeah, and one thing that I always focus on is telling the truth. Like I told her,
Truth.
I wasn't going to be the highest. I told her that, flat out, I'm not going to be the highest. But because I was so truthful, she's like, well, I appreciate that. And it's the same thing that I do in my business now, as a developer. When I go through zoning, I'm talking to one of the neighborhood groups. At this point, they call me for anything. They're like, hey, we're having this issue in the neighborhood. What do you think about it? And I said, I called, and the lady called me, and I go, we can be friends for the next couple of months, but after that, we're probably not going to be the best friends. She goes, what do you mean? I go, well, I'm going to have this development project, and I'm asking for more units than you probably want. And I go, you guys are not going to like it. But as long as you tell them the truth, they appreciate it so much more.
And they lower their guard too. When you kind of crack some jokes and you build a relationship, like they'll let you get away with things that someone else, they crack the whip on,
Exactly. But they also know that deep down, like, I want to be part of this. I live in this community because, we see that also a lot too, that we have investors and developers that do not market and do not build in their own community. They're like, oh, I can make more money in this community. That's why I'm here. So they're only here for the profit. I'm like, listen, I'm here for the long run. I have been in development meetings, and the somebody in the neighborhood is like, where do you live? And I tell them exactly. I tell them my address, and I ask them what kind of coffee they like, and they can come over anytime they want.
That's perfect. I mean, whenever you are investing in the community and you tell the truth, more importantly, like you said, why would they have any reason to doubt you? You're not just in it for the profits. You want to see, you said you're in it for the long term, for the long run. You want to see your community improve. You want to see, people moving in and thriving and going to school out there, right? It's a really cool feeling to give back to your community and directly be like, I built that house. I built that one. I renovated that one. We're about to close on this next one down the street. Like, I can only imagine that's the coolest feeling ever, to physically see the impact that you've made, not just online business or something, but like you see the physical assets as you drive home every day.
Absolutely. And, and a lot of it's guerrilla warfare, because when you really think about what I'm doing in the community, a big company can't do that.
Right.
So they can just give you a number, but they're not giving you the reasons. They don't see you. They don't see you coming, taking care of your properties. They haven't built that relationship and that rapport, and they can't, because they're just a big machine. So exactly. smaller companies, that's exactly how we're going to get a tactical advantage. And that's the only way we can compete in this market, because I can't win on numbers.
Right. But then also I think of that like Maya Angelou quote that says like, people don't care until they know how much you care. Something like that. They need to know that you actually care about them in the community And that's when they'll really open up and lower their guard and they'll let you in, versus these corporations where maybe people are getting paid by the hour and they don't care and they want to clock out at 4. They're not going to care as much as the little guys, like, the guerrilla warfare. You're out there past hours, you're going back to the property. Hey, you're installing security camera for neighborhood, security reasons, like to make sure that there's no thefts or whatever while that project's going on. Those are the little things that make you stand out, that the big guys are like, it's not in the budget, or we're not going to pay attention to it right now.
Yeah, and like even like especially in like Boston, it snows. Like some of these companies are so big, they own so much property. 5 p.m. the next day, it's the snow's still there. The neighbors take notice, and small things like we in one neighborhood, they had a trash issue, and they were calling ISD, calling the city, and they invited all the neighbors. Hey, we're gonna walk around and see who's doing a good job and who's not. Not only did I make sure my place was clean prior,
the rest.
but I walked with them. That's showing that, hey, I'm not here just to collect rent. I'm here to make an impact because I want to increase the value. I want to increase the impact that I have in my neighborhood.
That's amazing. I love that. And like you said, the big guys, they're not shoveling the snow 5 days later, and people can tell, hey, that person, this is just a number to them. They're not even stopping by, but you are there walking through the neighborhood with them as well.
Yeah, I remember that same house with the trash issue. You won't believe this. When I purchased it, and I don't know how they never caught it on title, they had over $1,400 of tickets unpaid.
For just like different fines and stuff from the city?
In the last 3 years, they just never paid a ticket. Like, all trash. 1,400.
Wow, that's amazing. Some people just don't get the memo, I guess.
Yeah.
That's funny. So what's been one of the things that you really want to focus on maybe going into 2022? I know we're kind of winding down Q4. What's one of your big goals for next year?
Honestly, just focusing on how education is key, but now it's also bigger than me because I just took on an assistant. So I have my first real employee. Yeah, I want to go the virtual way. I wanted to be able to take my assistant to lunch or, have a conversation. I'm a people person. So I wanted to so now I'm really focused on how to build the culture in education. I think those are the two biggest focuses right now for me, because I don't really focus on money because that will come. Yeah. But if you can focus on the culture and you can focus on the people, that's the most important thing, is the people that you're interacting with. How do you improve their lives? How do you improve them because if the first thing I ask in every one of my meetings, I start off my meeting, how are you doing? That's before any business transaction or how much we sold or what unit needs to be renovated. How are you doing? Because if they're not doing good as a person, if they don't feel good as a person, they're not going to produce for you anyway.
Exactly. That's amazing. So you're making sure to check in with them instead of just jumping in. Hey, how's those numbers going? How's that deal going? You're talking about them first because, like you said, their personal lives, whether we like it or not, our personal emotions and lives bleeds into our day-to-day activities and our performance. So I love that you're actually genuinely caring about them and solving any issues, helping them with anything that they're dealing with, so that they can bring the best version of themselves to their day-to-day, both in and outside of the office, I would imagine, because your performance, that's everything, right? So when you start performing better at work, you do better in your gym, your diet, your relationships, like everything gets better, your sleep, everything's connected. I've been learning that more and more recently. Like you can't slip in one area without slipping in a couple others as well.
It's a domino effect.
That's the right term. Yeah. Domino effect. Everything gets impacted either positively or negatively. So you got to try to really keep everything, dialed in and in check if possible.
Absolutely. And I feel like, one thing that I want to focus on my business is technology, and just always focus on education. Are you always feed? Because we feed ourselves every 3 meals a day, if not some people even more.
I eat a lot more.
Yeah. But what are you feeding your brain? What are you feeding? Right. I think what's that saying that poor people have big TVs and rich people or successful people have big libraries. So I'm a big component on just reading a lot and trying to just consume all that information and trying to figure it out, because I feel that when I'm educated, I can make decisions faster because I've seen it before.
I love that. I also was reviewing this, just talking about the poor thing. I was reviewing some notes, some old notebooks from 2018 or 2019. And I had a conversation with a friend and he told me this, and I just reread it from 2019's journal. And it said poor, it was an acronym, POOR, passing over opportunities repeatedly. I'm like, dang, I got to write that one down. And so a lot of us, a lot of people, they feel like they're not where they want to be financially, where they want to be in terms of their life, and opportunities are coming our way, right? Like we talked about earlier, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So many times we may be getting opportunities, but we haven't taken the time to prepare from reading and listening to podcasts and going to conferences and masterminds like the one that we met at. So we have to make sure everyone listening to be prepared. So when those opportunities come, you can actually jump on them, spot them, and see them through successfully.
Absolutely. And I think just to add on to exactly what you just said is also not making excuses.
No excuses.
And I remember a time in my life where I was really getting big into books. I think I was averaging about 24 books a year at the time. And my brother had a medical issue where he's not able to read as much as I am because it makes him tired, gives him headaches, et cetera. And I said, well, that's an excuse. I go, there's this thing called audiobooks, and
probably read it faster on an Audible than you can in person.
Absolutely. But here's the crazy thing. Years down the road, he's calling me and he goes, "Hey, I just read this amazing book. You should check it out." So he's telling me what to read. I was like, "Hey, how did this happen?" And I'm so proud of him. Like one thing he was able to do, he has a three family, and then he was able to get the city to let him develop an extra unit. So he turned it to a 4 family. And then he saw what we see in real estate, like, generational wealth, and you can pass it on to your children and teach them. And then he goes, "How do I get the next one?" So so this month, November 1st, he's actually moving in to his new house that I was actually his broker on, that he was able to acquire. And then I try to pass it on that he can be his own contractor, because technically if it's only 2 units, he can be his own contractor. But now the city consider him a developer now. I'm like,
like, man, deal number 2 needs a developer over here. Yeah, that's cool. He's trying to be like his brother, I see.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say he's trying to be like me. I just say, like, you know what? I want to make an impact on my nephews, and a wise person once told me, the biggest gift you can give to anyone is not be a burden. So what I mean by that is, because I was able to help my brother understand, like, don't make excuses, buy your own property. He's never going to have to ask me for money. He's never going to
teach a man to fish versus giving him a fish. He's only going to eat once. You teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. He's self-reliant, self-sustaining at that point, and he can teach his family, his children. So it's amazing what happens when you teach others how to provide for themselves, as opposed to just giving them a handout or, helping them on that one transaction. You changed his life, really, probably setting an example as well. He saw what you were doing, and now he wanted to go take action and do more. And even how we talked, right? You've been on 9 podcasts already. And the conversation that we had, you hadn't been on any, and you weren't sure what to share. What was your story? And here you are, taking it and running. So it's so cool to see how we can have an impact on others without even realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about impact, and what impact you can make in your community around the world. Like for me, one thing that I look for is, as I grow my businesses, and I already started doing it, is to give back to my college. They say, "What do you think about the curriculum? How would you like to change it? And would you like to be on the board?" Those kind of things. And it's like, you can make impact in so many different places. So we shouldn't limit how much impact that we can make.
That's super cool. I'm working on figuring that piece out too, because Carrot Camp and Trevor and Adrian, all the people that we met out there, they've made so much impact on their community and, the people in their lives. And I feel like that's something that we all need to do to really feel successful and fulfilled. The money, like you said, it's not all about the money. It's about the impact. The money will come if you're doing the right things. So I'm looking at, how do I give back to my community and do more? I'm so big on delegating. Like, I volunteered at the food bank and they had me mopping, and I'm like, man, I haven't mopped in like 5 years, but I'm giving back to the community. Chris, you just mop. Don't delegate this. Don't outsource it.
Yeah. And also it also comes down to freedom. Unfortunately, we still dealing with COVID, And at least in Massachusetts, we have a lot of the politicians in the cities. They have been cracking down and telling, firefighters, policemen, and state police, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, you're getting fired. And I'm totally vaccinated, but I feel that people should have their own choice.
Yeah,
And if
I
they don't
feel
have
the
a
same
choice,
way.
if they don't have a choice, that's not freedom.
Right. I've been seeing more and more people talking about it. I think Floyd Mayweather posted a video too. He's like, look, you can do what you want, but it's the freedom piece. I'm pro freedom. I'm okay if you do it or you don't. But once we lose that, I mean, what else is the country like? That's what the country was founded on, is freedom of choice and will and medical freedom and stuff like that. So there's a lot of crazy stuff definitely happening in the world. And I know people like you and I, we try to do the best we can to work with what we have and stay positive and stay focused, but just helping the community however we can too, because there will be a lot of people who lose their positions because they don't get those vaccinations. And what are they going to do next, right? I'm sure you're going to find a lot of great talent that you're able to employ for the work that you're doing now and the renovations and giving back to your community, right? So that'll be another way you give back as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's just so fascinating that like what we work for in our visions in being entrepreneurs, that we have that opportunity to have freedom where other people's like, wait a minute, how do I turn away this paycheck when I still have to feed my family?
Right.
And I don't
We
really
can do
believe in
that.
this shot. That is a tough position to really
That's very
be
tough.
in. And that's why I tell people, like my children, I always said, if my children can do whatever they want, like, but I'm gonna let them figure it out. And if they don't want to work, then I'll take care of them. I guess. But I mean, you just got to have freedom in your life. And I would love to build a company that I can pass on to generation and generation, because we talk about generational wealth, but we don't always talk about generational knowledge. You know,
100%.
and think about like real estate developing. I went to school for construction management, but there's not too many schools that teaches developing. That's
Nope.
that's taught from generation to generation. And I was been fortunate enough that I had great mentors around me that has been able to teach me the ropes.
100%. And you got to find those people. Sometimes it's like watching for YouTube videos. Sometimes it's going to an event where you meet those people and you stay in touch. And I know you're also on Trevor's, podcast as well, the Carrot Cast, which is really cool way of showing how things can change. You going to that event and being a customer and doing what you do has opened so many doors. And so just putting yourself out there for everyone listening, put yourself out there, make those connections, shake people's hands. You never know where those doors and opportunities will lead you. But this has been an awesome conversation. It seems like the hour flew by, man. We're almost at the end of our time here. Is there anything else you'd like to add or share with the audience before we let them know where to find you?
No, not at all. I mean, I think this has been a phenomenal podcast. If they have any questions, feel free to reach out. I changed my Instagram handle
I saw that.
to just my name, and part of the reason why I did that was because I, like you and I talked about it before, and I realized no matter what, I am the brand of the business, because if you take me away from the business, then you're taking away the value of the business. When you talk about people that buy businesses and they merger, a lot of times they put in the contract that they want to keep a certain talent.
The owner, they want to keep you on for a year or two to help
Yes.
transition things.
Yeah. So that just tells you how important it is. And I feel like as I build my brand, and especially now I have a couple of companies. So it's like, which company am I focusing on? So instead of focusing on one company, I'm focusing on myself. And then it just trickles down to my brands, to my companies.
Yeah, that was an eye-opening conversation when we did that call with the other members that were at the event that we did. I think Travis Copeland told me that, because I was like, yeah, I want to build more of a bigger brand, because right now, Chris Bella Real Estate, I mean, it's just me. And he pushed back and was like, dude, you are the brand. Personal development, personal branding is humongous, because people do business with the companies associated with the people that they like. And that also shifted my perspective, where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go all in on personal brand. Because if I come up with some fancy name and logo, that doesn't mean anything if people don't realize it's attached to me and like my podcast listeners, my friends, my family, my community. They're going to want to support whatever business, whether it's ABC or XYZ, because I'm a part of it. Right. So I love that you're going in on your personal brand as well. And I'll be sure to link all that up in the show notes so people can connect with you and your multiple companies.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
For sure. Well, thanks once again for your time, man. Really enjoyed this conversation. Great catching up. I'm glad we got to spend this time together this afternoon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Everyone make sure to go connect with him. And Jose, not Josie. I was like, I got it right the
Yes.
first time. Jose. It's like Jose. Well, thanks again, Jose. I really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being a listener to the show and for checking out my message. If you've been here for a while, I'm especially grateful for you. But if you're new here, thank you once again for being a listener. Just wanted to let you know, I help people buy, sell, or rent real estate across the nation in the US. I probably could even help you across the world, but it just gets a little more difficult with time zones and setting up times to chat. If you have any questions at all, shoot me a DM on Instagram. My handle is chrisbello_, or you can also go to my website, chrisbello.com/real estate. Again, that is chrisbello.com/real estate. Happy to help any way that I can. And thank you once again for being a listener.